basketball analysis with over 70 years combined experience.
The Bob, Ryan, and Jeff Goodman podcast is brought to you by Price Picks and the Game Time app.
Time for the Bob, Ryan, Gary Tanguay pod here on CLNS Media. Brought to you by Price Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network. Pick more, pick less with Price Picks. We are going to get into a little NFL today. We're waiting for the NBA season to start. We have talked about the Celtics. We've talked about the Knicks and the Sixers. We got the lay of the land. But to wrap things up, we do need to talk about Gerard Maye. That is coming up a little bit later on. And Bob has certainly covered enough teams on the rebuild to have a thing or two to say about this. So, Bob, as we kick things off, Lonzo returns, and just your thoughts on that, and something obviously that people are anticipating.
This is as long a hiatus as I am ever aware of in this league, and I don't know about any other league, an injury-related 2.5 years. Lonzo Ball made his debut amidst all the controversy about Daddy in the 17-18 season. And he last was seen on the court in the 21-22 season, halfway through. He's missed 2.5 years. He'll be 27 years old on the 27th of this month, October. He's a good player. He turned out to be, and apparently a really good guy. You know, he's weathered the storm with his crazy father very well, and you know, he's managed to navigate those choppy waters extremely well as a person. He's a good player. It's going to be interesting to see what effect he does have on the Bulls. They had their little moment closed a few years ago, but he'll help them out. He made a debut, his return last night to a well-deserved standing ovation, and he played 15 minutes and he scored 10 points. He shot 4 for 6 and had 10 points. He's a good defender. He's a good feeder. He's a good player. I mean, he's a borderline all-star. And but it's welcome. He's talk about going through hell. I mean, how many athletes? I don't care what sport you're talking about. Right. A 2.5 year hiatus due to injury that's extraordinary, really. You know, I mean, so I'm rooting for him to have a career and restore himself, and he deserves it. So it's nice to see Lonzo Ball back.
Some would have quit.
It's, you know, of course, it's in his blood that the kids were raised, you know, to play ball. You know, this is and you know, Daddy's a lunatic, and they managed to sidestep that very nicely. And apparently, he and his brother LaMelo, and there was a third one. They've been popular with their teammates. They've handled themselves. I used to think that back when he was a rookie in the early and Daddy Lamar was still shooting off, that he'd go into practice and say, "Hey, Dad was at it again," you know, but don't worry, guys, I'm okay, you know. I mean, I just think that's probably the way he's handled this thing. But, you know, of course, our great colleague and friend, Jeff Goodman, you know, he was on the ground floor of the Ball family story. He went to see them in Europe and when they were there, and it was
the fourth brother, Jeff Goodman.
So, you know, but I'm sure Jeff, we'll get his thoughts on it, but I'd like to have his thoughts on it. But so welcome back, Lonzo Ball, on behalf of the.
Well, here's my parental view on this after having 3 kids and still raising a teenager. Nature versus nurture. And I always go back to nature. And for the longest time, I thought I would be handing off all of my bad habits and family gloom, the Irish half of me, right, Bob? The Irish,
okay.
The gloom, right, to my kids. And I've read up on this quite a bit, and it's not it's not like that at all. Like, my kids are all different, and there are, of course, some family similarities a little bit, but they're all different. And I think I don't see a better example than the Ball situation.
Yeah.
Because the 2 young men you just mentioned, I cannot tell you how much credit I give them for being their own men.
Yeah.
Because, you know, your father, and you have mentioned it, I think one of the reasons you're in the business you're in is because of your dad.
Yep.
And tragically, you lost him as a young man, which sucks. But I'm sure that had an exorbitant influence on you.
Oh.
to a degree. It's why you're in what you're in. But like, you're not your father. You're not your mother. And, one of the my family would always say that, oh, he's just like Uncle Jack, or he's just like Grandpa. I go, no. Stop that crap. The kids come out and they make their own way and they become their own people. And this is a perfect example where I cannot give these two kids, basketball aside, because this thing was a circus. Big Baller 3, starting their own sneaker company. I mean, it was insane. And these kids, and like you said, Bob, like, they're good players. Well, one brother's better than the other, but I mean, they're not Jordan. They're not Durant. They're good players, and these young men have kept their heads on their shoulders, despite their father loves them, but he's out of his mind. It's like,
right. He was the ultimate stage father. That was what it was.
And they survived.
And, but this is, basketball version of Gypsy, but they survived very nicely. And they deserve better. Lonzo deserved better than to have his career interrupted for 2.5 years. I hope he can resurrect himself. And
me too.
I'll be watching this one closely.
I haven't heard from the old man. Where is he?
No, I know. I don't know. That's true. Well, it's welcome. That's welcome. Silence is golden here and now.
Probably after a while. Well,
if I can echo the tremolos here, silence is golden. So that's good. We'll have to hear. Well, anyway, he's back, and the Bulls. The Bulls aren't a contender. They had a little flurry back in a number of years ago when they were pretty damn good. But and I don't know how good they can be anymore. We'll have to. They're in a sort of almost become an anonymous team right now.
Right.
Almost like the Western Conference version of the Wizards, who have been anonymous for 30 years. That's a story. I've explored that story on occasion, and I see if we have more reason to go into it again. The last time the Wizards were really relevant, and how it must be to growing up as a so-called fan of theirs. What do you sink your teeth into? But anyway, that's another story. I digress.
We digress in this podcast, Bob. Agent Zero had a gun. That's the last thing I remember about that franchise.
That's good. That's very good.
You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Hey, sign up today. Get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Cook up hot takes with your friends and win real money this football season when you and your crew run your game on Prize Picks. This week on the Prize Picks football board, Justin Jefferson for more than 83.5 receiving yards, and Patrick Mahomes for less than 267.5 passing yards. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game.
Okay, so the WNBA Finals. With Caitlin Clark out of the picture, they continue to thrive.
Ratings are terrific. People, I know now what happened. People don't know if you didn't care or you overslept or something. Or the Liberty were down 15 early. They won on a clinching buzzer beater. 1 second to go. A step back 3 drilled about 28 feet by Sabrina Ionescu, who had hit a big 3 to put him up by 4 with about a minute and some to go. But it was a good game to watch, and the Lynx came back and scored and made it a game again. Anyway, she won the game. They're up 2-1. It's a best of 5. Next year it'll be a best of 7, but still a best of 5. So they're 1 game away to Liberty. Liberty spent a lot of money, and that in the context of the NBA, the WNBA, they went out for a super team idea. And loaded up, and they're on the verge of being rewarded for that. Sabrina Ionescu, I did X out was Caitlin before Caitlin, and of course I'm getting hooted down because a little bit. But I do mean that she was a big college star and came in with a lot of ballyhoo. But the league didn't. In the context of the times, the WNBA didn't have the focus it has now, and the focus is almost directly due to Caitlin Clark. And someone said to me, "Oh, you're trying to put down Caitlin Clark." No, I'm trying to elevate Sabrina Ionescu. Don't forget what the ballyhoo that greeted her arrival in that league. She's a she's a very nice, well-rounded player. And of course, Brianna Stewart had another big game, 30+ points, blocked 6 shots last I recall. She's reminding everybody how great she is, and she's getting a lot of focus in this playoffs. So I'm glad of that. It's just amazing the number of UConn players, though, that have had an impact over the time, you know. But and I'm reading up on this thing. The celebrities are into this, and last night some of the tweets, the exes that came out after the game was over. Kevin Durant, you know, was heard from, and a few other luminaries in the game. The males are paying attention. The focus is on. It's just all good. The great thing is that they're reminding people that Caitlin Clark, the fallout is so incredible. Watching her is a treasure, a pleasure. But she's focused spotlighting the entire league, so people can see all these other terrific players that have been going on, you know, under the radar for the most people for all these years, and they're getting their due now. And this is a Tiger Woods effect. You can't thank her enough. And as always, and she's handled it, I think, very well with great dignity and class. She did not want to get caught up in that nonsense of the racial thing that's been thrown around with Angel Reese and, you know, and backlash and all that stuff. You know, she's trying to float above it. She's trying to, you know, she's announcing it, and she's handled it very well. But this league is taking a huge step forward in just 12 months. And so, you know, you told me if last year, forget about 2 or 5 years ago, if I would have gotten up in the morning and announced that my primary thing I'm interested in today is at 8:00 tonight, I want to see the Lynx and the Liberty, you know, and that's on a night when baseball is being played, and I'm still a baseball guy for, you know, ultimately. But that was my focus. Did I flip? Yeah, I flipped the dial. I was playing flipper, but my anchor was the women's basketball game. My secondary was the Dodgers and the Mets. Okay, and that would have never happened before. But this year,
other than Caitlin Clark bringing attention to it, why do you think it is so popular?
People are finding out it's a different game, and it's not dependent on aerial circus. It's not totally dependent on the three, the way the NBA has become, you know, in a way. It's basketball of days gone by, reminding people, you know, that you can have a game that doesn't have to have an aerial circus every night. That they pass, they move, they have team play, and there's some terrific players. That shot she made last night in the clutch. Now, you know, if that were the NBA, they'd be writing sonnets about it, because, I mean, it was a step back three, perfectly, you know, swish three. I mean, the players are good players, and the game. I've been, you know, following it since I really introduced to it heavily in 1992 at the Olympics, because in addition to the Dream Team, I covered every women's game. Our game, and that's when we famously lost in the semifinals to the EUN. So, you know, after the breakup of the Soviet Union, and we lost the game to them, and we wound up getting the bronze. But I subsequently, at every world championship I went to, or Olympics, I you know, followed women's basketball as well, and so I'm a fan of it. It's a nice brand of basketball to watch.
It's a quality product. That's
my thing about
product, like female tennis, right? I mean, for the longest time, I mean, Martina never. If you would say, like, who is the most famous tennis player in the world? Yeah, it's Borg and Connors, but you could say Navratilova.
Yeah,
you know, or Kirsieva, because the game. Like, I remember watching. Not that I'm a big tennis guy, but, you know, if I'm watching Wimbledon, I would be just as interested in the women as the men, because the game was great. The WNBA is a quality product. It's and when people say, I go, and Caitlin Clark, I think, helped bring some people over to see it. You've known it for a while. Yeah. You know, I've covered women's basketball. I mean, it's a good take.
I remember Diana Taurasi as a freshman. I went down to Hartford to cover a game, and was blown away by Diana Taurasi all those years ago as a freshman. I was a big fan of Sue Bird. I thought she was a terrific. And Dawn Staley herself, the great coach of South Carolina. Dawn Staley, in the 1996 Olympics, I wrote a column about Dawn Staley and what a wonderful point guard she was, and kiddingly, she's the best point guard in the world. Well, she understood the position as well as any male you've ever seen. She did understood the position. She was great. There was I've always Lisa Leslie. I'm still waiting to see a better pivot player in the women's game today than Lisa Leslie. She's the gold standard of pivot play for the women. She's
what about Cheryl Swoops?
she's the Kareem / Wilt /
Right.
Russell of women's basketball in that position, as far as I'm concerned. And so, they've been there all along, and now people are understanding more and more that. Here's my theory I've always had about basketball, and specifically, I apply a certain mentality to the level of play that I'm watching with certain level of expectation about what it's all about. They each have a different essence. So high school is one thing, and I can appreciate a good high school game by applying my experience and thought about what you can expect and should expect and out of a high school level of performance. Then we go to college, and then you've got different levels of college. You got Division III, you got Division II, you got Division I. Okay, all different essence. Different, and then you hit the NBA, and so I can plug myself into any of those levels and say this is what it's right to expect and enjoy.
Right, and enjoy the game.
And enjoy them each on their own level. The NBA, if you don't love women's, I'm not saying you have to love women's basketball, but I think if you really love basketball, you probably you should like women's basketball. So if you really love it, if it's just something, when you're vaguely in your repertoire, fine. It's the way I am about certain other sports, but certainly in the women's basketball, they deserve, this is a long overdue credit and spotlight they're getting. And I'm happy for everybody.
No doubt.
There's nothing like seeing a game live. I mean, watching it on TV is great. We have all the technology. We have our phones. We have access to everything. But being there in person is definitely the way to go. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account. Use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time.
So, Bob, we're going to switch gears a little bit because we're waiting for the real NBA games to start. And we have covered all the bases, but Gerard Mayo, who I happen to think a lot of, worked with him at Comcast Sportsnet, NBC Sports Boston for a couple of years. Wonderful guy. I mean, the guy is a top shelf person. Now, it all comes down to wins and losses. I understand that in the NBA. And it's a sports talk radio thing. The Patriots, they're a mess.
Yeah.
But you know what? Get over it. It's going to take time. And I think that if anybody thinks that you can get on Mayo now, it's just uneducated. You got to give this guy like 3 years. You got to get some players.
He's not the problem. The roster's the problem, period. The roster is the problem. He's managing a subpar NFL roster. I've already seen at least one reference this week, if not, and you'll see it frequently, just casually stating it as a given. The reference is they're the worst team in the league right now. Any given game, they should be the underdog right now, no matter who they're playing. This is what people think, and why not? Their crowning achievement looks worse and worse because the Bengals, haven't proven out to be anything, so that game with Miami was an embarrassment to both of them. Seriously, that was awful. That was terrible. That's a burn the film. Don't let anybody ever see it, folks. If I'm Roger Goodell, I ordered all the films confiscated, all the tapes, get rid of them. We don't want anybody to ever see this game. Miami was only marginally better than the Patriots that day. And Patriots beat themselves over 12 penalties, and they can people are going to hold him accountable for that. That the penalties thing.
That's
he's
fine.
Got to clean that up. He's got to somehow, but he's not the problem. The problem is a lack of overall talent on their roster. Now we'll see how much Drake Maye can rectify the situation to some degree. I'm a little bit amused after that performance. The stuff we're reading, that is so glowing all of a sudden. And I just hope get a grip now, folks. But it was encouraging, and you needed. And if you're a Patriots fan, you needed encouragement. We know that you needed that. And that one play specifically at the end of the half. The great 40-yard pass, is held up as the best play. It's the best play we've seen in a couple of years, since post Brady, quite frankly. Good. If he's capable, and it may not turn out to be an isolated incident, it may turn out to be who he is. Wouldn't that be nice? So it was encouraging, and that was that's fine. But more and more people keep getting hurt, and then they're just. they're just no good. And
Look, Bill left the cupboard bare.
yes,
Bill left the cupboard bare, and they've even been on Wolf a little bit. He's been the boss. He's been the GM for less than a year. And this I do know. Michael Holley wrote did you read Holley's book, War Room?
No.
Okay. If you're ever looking for, you have a million books on the docket. You're always reading a book.
Yeah.
Everybody points to Holley's, one during the Super Bowl run. When they win the Super Bowl, everybody points to that. That's the big one. The War Room is, for me, as a member of the media, because some of the stuff that were in the other, that Michael documented, some of us knew if you were working on the beat every day. War Room's the best book he's ever written. It's fantastic because it goes into the back channels of the draft.
Mm-hmm.
And there were just times that, Bill's scouts were saying, Bill, you can't, no, that's not the right move. And Bill's like, no, I'm picking him. He went against his advisors a lot.
Well,
so when some people say, well, Wolf was part of the old regime, I go, yeah, but that doesn't mean, Nick Caserio was part of the old regime and Houston's looking pretty good.
In the beginning, he was being cited way back, for some of these prescient moves, like the greatest one being Vrabel, who was a sub. And he saw something in Mike Vrabel, and he turned out to be, an integral part of multiple.
Oh, but he also listened to his guys. He also had Pioli with him then too.
Yeah, he had got Pioli, right.
And he had some good guys in the room, but Bill wasn't Bill then. Bill was still, when he got Vrabel, Bill was still a couple of losses away from being fired in 2000.
Yeah.
But I think that when Bill got to the end of the line a little bit, I just think he stopped listening.
It was very analogous, to the entire Pitino regime in basketball, because Rick Pitino, the coach, was done in by Rick Pitino, the general manager.
It's the same thing, Bill. Because, for me, Bill, Bob, you're Bob.
Yeah.
Same thing, Bob. I thought Pitino was he is one of the best coaches ever in all sports. I think he's a great coach. But I remember, you were there the day, the coronation at the Garden. Remember?
Oh, God, yeah. Oh,
remember
yeah.
where Red isn't up on the stage?
I sure was.
And
that whole thing, and I love the fact that I think we may have mentioned this. Rick is trying to expunge that whole experience from his resume almost. It's like, the missing years,
yes, it didn't happen.
No, it never happened.
Well, he could coach. He did a good job with the Knicks. But I'll never forget Stuart Lane and he were walking from the old office over to the Garden, and I was working for Channel 4. So, all the big shots, LaBelle and Numi, God bless them, they were all in the building. And I'm, on the sidewalk following everybody, and we're videotaping Rick walking across the street with Stuart, from the offices. And he goes, Stuart, I wanted to talk to you about the uniform colors and the sneaker colors. And he wanted people to hear him because he wanted to be the next Riley. He was like, that's what got him in trouble. Who cares? Who cares? That's the part that. But Pitino,
he's still
great coach.
I'm all. We're going to see what happens with St. John's. This is by the way, this is where we've come, and we will be talking about college basketball with Jeff when the season comes. Don't worry, it's coming soon enough. But this is where we are now. Rick Pitino has not recruited a single freshman at St. John's this year. He doesn't need one. He's got nothing but transfers.
Right.
I'm not saying so. That's where we are. But he's right in the forefront, folks. He's got a team of transfers, and there's, we'll see how good he thinks they're going to. He seems to think they're going to be pretty damn good. And St. John's, we'll keep our eye on that. But this is where we are, folks. He's not even interested in the freshman.
Well, and this goes to why I think Caitlin Clark took off is the people still need an identity. They need a team. They need. We talk. UConn won 2 titles with different rosters. They want an identity. College basketball to me was as much about Bobby Hurley was drafted. Who was the young point guard for Syracuse? There were 2. Was it Jerry?
Jerry Corcoran.
Maybe, but Syracuse, and it was during the.
They had we had Sherman Douglas.
Sherman, but Sherman played in the NBA. But anyways,
yeah.
Whenever for every Carmelo, for every Carmelo Anthony you had, like on a team. You had a Billy Donovan, right?
Yeah.
Who wasn't going to play in the NBA, but you liked him, right? You rooted for him. You liked him. He was my guy.
Oh, no.
And they don't have that anymore.
There's a lot to like. Yeah, that's a very good point. The whole fabric of it. And by the way, apropos of nothing that we've been talking about or that we're supposed to be on our domain, it just blew me away. There is a story in the USA Today on Kirby Smart at Georgia. And it's the longest single story. It's a New Yorker kind of a lengthy story that, and when you come away and reading it about, you realize how far away from what we grew up and knew about college sports that it is gone. And Georgia's Exhibit A. I recommend it. It's almost sobering. If you haven't been paying attention, you won't believe what you're reading. But if you have been paying attention, you're confirmed. You know what I'm saying? About what the state of affairs is in college football with the highest level and with Georgia.
Big money, Bob.
He's making $13 million a year now, Kirby Smart. 13. And Georgia has got multiple, upwards of 30 arrests over the last several years of DUIs and this and that and all kinds of stuff. He's making 13, excuse me.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
I didn't know it that much. I thought it was more but anyway, it blew me away.
Yeah, college, it's big money, and that's.
And another story I got to bring up since I, we're off top. We'll bring up this other one. I hadn't given this one thought. One of the byproducts of the new order of college football and big time basketball, and with the NIL money that players now possess.
Right.
Guess what is a mode of punishment that is now being implemented in certain places? Not a suspension, a fine. College players are getting fined by their coaches for various transgressions.
They have the money.
Say no more.
But it's amateur.
Yeah. Oh, no. Well, when I grew up, in the big issues on amateurism, track and field was very important. And tennis, of course, the difference between there was no pro tennis. There was pro tennis, but it was separate from all the real world of tennis. Was the amateurs who played for the U.S. Open and the Wimbledon and the Australian and the French, and then the pros had their own circuit. Jack Kramer ran it and all blah blah blah. Okay, shamateurs. They called them shamateurs. The guys that that there's no more shamateur. You're either amateur or you're pro, and they are they're pros. Anyway, fining college players. That's a new one on me. That's my revelation for today. I didn't know.
I just remember when I did a Tanguay Takes America, and we stopped at the University of Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember for what Patriot player, but we did a sit down with Kirby and, came in, very nice guy, oh shucks, whole bit, And then I just saw the indoor practice facility and one of the fields was for kicking only, just for kicking. It was indoor just for kicking. And the weight room, the weight room was as big as Gillette Stadium. It was as big as Gillette Stadium, 100 players. But when I said, this field is kind of thin. And they go, yeah, it's just for the kickers.
I recommend this story. Anybody's remotely interested in college sports, I recommend this story. And I don't know who you are. You are going to be enlightened as far as I don't know who you are. I'll be willing to bet that you're going to go, oh my God, I didn't know. I had no idea things are what they are. And Georgia, it's really a revelation.
Well, Bob, as they say, we used to say up in Rumford, Maine, it's always a pleasure chewing the fat with you.
Rumford. All right.
Anyways, we are brought to you by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network. Pick more, pick less with Prize Picks. For Bob, Ryan and Gary Tanguay. Robert, until next week.
Terrific.